Hey guys, Dantics here. What you're seeing now is Exodus, an up-and-coming sci-fi action RPG being developed by the brains behind Knights of the Old Republic, Mass Effect 1, Halo 4, and much more. I was lucky enough to get a day's worth of hands-on time with their currently in development build, and let me tell you, if you at all like the Mass Effect trilogy, or like sci-fis, like RPGs, or well, any narrative-driven games in general, you're gonna want to stick around for this while I go through everything you need to know about the game with as little spoilers as possible.
Good to go.
At a top level, Exodus is intended to be a truly massive in scope space opera that takes itself and its lore very seriously. They've already produced 2 huge lore books going through every painstakingly handcrafted detail. Hold on, just take a look at these. They are absolutely massive. So we have the encyclopedia, we have the handbook. It goes through the lore in crazy detail, and we have 2 novels, yes, one of which only just released. So a common question I was asked was in regards to the tone of the game. So let me open by reassuring you that this isn't Veilguard or Andromeda. If there's any mockery, it will be earned, not slapped in your face to mask bad writing. The tone is similar to the original Mass Effect, which is no surprise considering Drew Karpyshyn, the narrative mind behind that game, is the narrative lead on Exodus. This is a serious game with themes of survival, danger, the unknown, and coming together to overcome insurmountable odds. If you remember the looming danger you felt in Mass Effect 1, that's what you're getting here. You may have already noticed, but there are no sentient aliens in this galaxy. All celestial life has a terrestrial origin. You see, in Exodus, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, and everything follows the principle that the closer you get to the speed of light, the slower time is relative to those that are stationary. Time dilation. So when escaping Earth, looking for green worlds, some were found and a signal was sent out to the other Ark ships. By the time you and humanity get to these green worlds, tens of thousands of years have passed for those who arrived first, the Celestials. Humans are well and truly the underdogs in this universe. The Celestials are tens of thousands of years more technologically and biologically more advanced, though biologically is debatable and does bring up themes of hubris. There are Celestials roaming around space that look like eldritch horrors that will steal your memories and psychologically torture you for decades if they ever capture you with their creepy organic ships. There are Celestials that produce children only to transfer their own minds into those children to continue their line. There are genetically and technologically developed creatures called changelings that were made for a particular purpose, like manual labor, all the way to transporting people into battle in some kind of organic bug meat APC. But humans aren't alone. Our love for animals means that many of those animals have been uplifted and gifted human levels of intelligence. These awakened animals are everywhere in the game. Your main character, June, has a brother, an awakened canine that can communicate with you via technology in his forehead.
June, hey, come on.
Houston?
I'm here. Are you?
Yeah, I think so.
While exploring the human city of Persepolis, there was a whole district dedicated to awakened animals, with many running around. Awakened raccoons talking lispfully, awakened ravens running spy networks, and awakened elephants running shops like this one. I was expecting awakened animals to be very, well, animalistic, like the dogs in the Disney movie Up. But no, they talk to you like any human would, or any human-like alien would.
Good morning. Afternoon? I forget.
You forget?
So all of this to answer the question, does Exodus suffer from not having a diverse cast of aliens like other sci-fi series, example Star Wars? The answer is no. In fact, it feels like there's even more of a diverse cast of aliens in this game than many others. During my playtime, I ran into a changeling called a holosim. These were created as an organic data bank, and talking to it to get information was the most alien conversation I think I've had in the game for a long time. Its obsession with discovering new things and trading data for data meant that it had little regard for its own safety if it meant an adequate trade of information. It reminded me a bit of modern Solus. In sci-fi games you have aliens, but many still talk and act like humans. In Exodus, I noticed there's an overwhelming amount of diversity in allies, enemies, and neutral parties. Not to mention, there's alien fauna and flora, not just sentient types. For example, we saw these colossal sandworm-like creatures. What we played was very much unfinished though, as there's most likely a year left of development, which is one of the reasons they let us play 2 different sections of the game. One of which was much later in the game but was just for our fun. I'm kind of disappointed they're not letting us talk about it because it does actually paint the game in a positive light. We're unable to discuss the details here, so I'll be discussing mostly what we played in the first part. Now, we didn't get to customize our character at all, but we know that that feature will be in the game. Unfortunately, that means I can't answer any questions about female June or the character creator. We played as male June, who's born with the ability to tap into celestial technology and shape livestone. You set out to figure out how to stop a technovirus called the Rot, which is destroying the technology that's keeping your planet of Lydon habitable. Lydon needs this technology because humans are relegated to the backwaters of the galaxy. As a traveler, you exodus with your crew to find ancient celestial technology called remnants, which when brought back can drastically improve humanity's hope of survival. The only issue is when you exodus, years and decades can pass back home. When you find remnants, you'll need to make a choice in how to use them. For example, an ancient weapon can protect Lydon or be given to scientists to study. The idea is that when we set out on Exodus again, we return to much time being passed and the ultimate consequences of our choices playing out. Perhaps humanity fended off an attack with the weapon and upgraded their technology, or ended up attracting the Mariyama Celestials to our now budding flame of a civilization. Hey, hi, it's me again. I'm not sure if I've earned your sub yet, but I have a lot of content coming, so if I haven't, maybe drop a comment or a like instead. I really do appreciate it. One mission later on in our play session had us set out on an exodus that would have had 10 years pass at home when we return. We were also forced to leave a companion behind, so they'll be 10 years older when we return, and any remnants that we left behind prior would develop based on the choices we made. So when we return, we'll see the result of that. The only problem is, guys, we weren't shown any. Sadly, I can't comment on the consequences of Exodus because the developers aren't ready to show it. We know about it in theory, but I don't know how the devs' grand ambition will play out in reality. And that's the most disappointing thing about the playtest. Exodus is leaning on time dilation and choices as the major marketing point, and we have yet to see an example. Back to it, we started our session a little past the beginning of the game, wherein we have our first 2 companions, Tom and Elise. These 2 seem to work well together, but are diametrically opposed. Elise is more of your renegade style character, and Tom is more of a damaged paragon. They play off each other very well, as Tom is a kind of father figure or mentor, the experienced traveler, whereas Elise is the younger, headstrong sister that needs to be checked or leaned into. I feel in these kinds of games, characters, their narrative and writing is incredibly important, but we didn't have the opportunity to really assess how deep they go. Frankly, I feel as though I would have liked to see characters that immediately gripped me, but Tom and Elise, they aren't it just by their very nature. It's almost like Jacob and Miranda from Mass Effect 2. They're there to kind of counterbalance the others once you get them. One such character is Salt, an awakened octopus. Octopuses are fiercely independent hunters, and Salt leans into this, and I can foresee her being a fan favorite.
We got your back, June. You too, Salt.
Not necessary. If you die, I leave. Contract void.
Wow. You don't mince words, do you?
It's an Octo thing. You'll get used to it.
All right. Time to move out.
How can you resist an octopus in a mech suit shooting ink bombs? I don't know. The single most common question I received is about character designs. Are any visually appealing? I have to be honest with what I saw. No, there wasn't a single visually appealing character, at least to my fairly generous taste. The devs seemingly played it much too safe with their designs. I wasn't the only one who thought this. I talked to everyone at the event and it was a common piece of feedback. Now the style they're using makes sense. They're going for a timeless look that doesn't necessarily age badly. The problem is it doesn't quite look right. Some faces seem off, the eyes, they aren't perfect yet, and the males and the females look quite, well, lack of a better word, and don't chastise me, I'm being honest, they look ugly. My wife pointed this out to me, and when someone that is sweet and accepting of everyone notices ugly character designs, it's probably worse than I think. Now, I've made the devs aware of this, and I've pointed out the many times you guys have told me about it, so I have no doubt they're at least looking into it. The Expanse Osiris Reborn isn't a perfect game, but their human designs are very much beating out Exodus here. Exodus is releasing in 2027. We're well past the need to pretend fantasy doesn't matter at all. I recently saw a tiny indie developer go viral with currently 3 million plus views on a simple female romance companion design because how uncommon feminine women and masculine men are in gaming these days. All I know is my female friends are wanting to romance some attractive males and vice versa. So don't worry guys, I hear you all and the feedback has been given. Let's hope they listen. Now, another question was about if there is woke writing or Marvel movie style writing in the game, and I've already gone through it. I think the writing is fairly good, and I don't see any of that in the game just now.
Mission all loaded up?
Gears in storage. My lovely suit. Good to go.
Where's Tom?
Last minute prep. Or drinking. Probably both.
Does he do that often? Drinking right before a job?
Man's got his vices, but he gets shit done, okay? Nothing else to say.
Good. You made it. Let's hop on.
So, a complete change of direction. After chatting with Tom and Elise, the details of which I don't want to spoil, we got to experience some combat. And the closest comparison I can make is Mass Effect 3. You can roll, you can shoot, you can fire off your abilities, you can sprint, heavy melee, get into cover, etc. The difference is the cover system. You don't snap into it. And maybe because I'm so used to snapping into it that it felt a bit strange to me, but the idea is that you shouldn't get locked in and you can freely move around the battlefield while still being able to get behind cover and fire over it or fire your abilities over it. With a little fine tuning, I foresee it working fairly well. Now, you can approach combat either guns and abilities blazing or with stealth, though with what we played it's hard to know if a pure powers based build is possible. You'll be happy to hear though that you can approach almost every combat encounter stealthed. Some fights you'll have to take per normal like bosses, but you can clear out any scrubs by avoiding or taking them out without being detected. We had many tools to do that, including a kind of active camo tool, a mode of our recycler which I'll go through soon, that was silent and deadly, and our heavy melee takedown when you get up close to those undetected. But when the fight breaks out, what can you rely on? Well, we had access to a weapon called the Recycler. This is a weapon that can morph into different modes, like a burst fire with high accuracy rifle mode, to a sniper or shotgun, full automatic, or even that charge up headshot based silent mode that I mentioned before. The idea is that as a traveler, you're venturing into the unknown. There isn't just ammo laid about in ancient ruins like there was in Andromeda. So you can throw materials you find into the weapon and it will produce ammo. Gameplay wise, that is translated into you being able to craft ammo anywhere, even in combat. Each mode can be upgraded, it can be modded with different effects, and it follows a kind of skill tree path, making the modes play very differently. Modding weapons is similar to the systems in Andromeda, but each recycler mode has slots you can insert the mods into that you either craft or find on the bodies of enemies. Yes, enemies can drop mods. This can really fine-tune how you want each mode to feel. The Recycler is a versatile weapon for a traveler, but I can't help feeling a bit disappointed. I would have preferred more weapons. Even though you can switch its modes, it doesn't feel like you have a choice of weapons. Now, in the Exodus handbook, there are a lot of these mortal gift remnant weapons with weird and interesting effects. One such weapon is powerful, but it slowly drives its user mad as it whispers to him. It just wants carnage and is going to make you crazy the more you use it. There's such a massive amount of creativity within the lore, it's sad to see us so damn restricted weapon-wise, especially in an RPG. However, I will say that we're unsure if you can find interesting weapons later on. One piece of feedback I gave is that at least give us some powerful mortal weapons to use. They can have limited ammo and you can only refuel them at way stations to keep on theme. But weapon variety was lacking. That's not to say though that what there wasn't good. Each mode had a weight, it was punchy and it felt great to use. Combat flowed well and it balanced a decent amount of challenge with a power fantasy. Now, I'm a fairly experienced action RPG player and the difficulty felt right. Some enemies were far more difficult intentionally and some were just there to dust off your weapon. You can scan at any time and doing so reveals enemies' weaknesses. Not in a basic way as well, but it gives you a full breakdown of the enemy along with the recycler mode that may work well against it, and it also points out on its body particular points that are vulnerable. For example, the heavy turrets had ammo canisters at the back that when shot, explode and deal critical damage to the turret. I'll put some footage up now of the weak points, but you'll get the idea. There was one particular boss that gave me a lot of trouble. I had to run away and quickly slap some materials to the recycler in order to get more ammo. Then I slid behind it and took out its weak points in a cinematic way that I wish we were allowed to capture. Yes, what you're seeing now is not my footage, it's B-roll. But those looking for even more of a challenge, the devs did say there will be more combat difficulties, so no doubt those who want a challenge will be able to get it. Now, you have your recycler, but you also have powers. Using your gauntlet, June can manipulate Livestone to help in traversal and help take out enemies. The first power we got was Eruption, which would paint a line in front of us that when released, June would slam his fist into the ground and create a path in front of him. Any enemies or environmental hazards will be thrown up into the air and damaged. There was a decent cooldown on this ability that can be reduced with items and the skill tree, which I'll go through later, but it did a lot of damage. There's also the lance, which you can create and throw at enemies for it to lodge in them and explode later. And then you have the ability to encase enemies in Livestone. They were more or less fun to use, but I couldn't help feel a little worried that we were too limited. In Mass Effect, you could build completely around never firing a shot between tech and biotics. Here, it doesn't look like you can make an entire build off using your abilities. There simply wasn't the variety in what we played. But of course, I can't be sure, it's all still in development. Alongside your abilities are tools. We could throw grenades, we could use stealth, and much more that aid in combat. Explosions feel fantastic, stealth feels really good, and overall, no notes. Though I can't help compare the combat to The Expanse Osiris Reborn, since we also recently got to play an early build, and I have to say, look, Exodus's characters suck compared to Osiris Reborn, but its combat is much more complete, at least animation wise. You feel more grounded, the combat is more natural. It was a true pleasure to play. It feels really, really good. It was Mr. Holton that mentioned that right after we stopped playing, he would have liked to see more dismemberment and adult themes in the combat like gore, and I have to agree with him there. It would be nice if bullets took off limbs or powers showed a bit more visceral impact. Unlike a lot of people who played the game, I intentionally broke the game a little bit and was able to use characters we weren't allowed to use. I can't talk about it. And I was able to shoot enemies' heads off. And when I did, the popping sound was fantastic. It felt really, really good. And I just hope they make the game visceral and crunchy like that with gore and the ability to remove limbs in the full game. It was very, very satisfying. Oh man, I'm sounding like a psychopath, but you all know what I mean. This is an adult game and I hope they treat it as such. Now, I mentioned enemy variety before, but it holds up in combat. Early on, we're fighting other humans, but even they had a large range of types. Later on, we were fighting ancient mechs called the Ghosts, and they were a standout. They speak in an eerily ghostly way while you fight them, and it reminds me a bit of Predator in that They're speaking mostly nonsense, but there's an uncanniness to it. I was extremely impressed with the variety of those enemies as well, and each of them had their own attacks and weaknesses. We fought a few mini-bosses with their own mechanics as well, but I won't spoil that. There was a lot of named enemies in the parts we played, which are variants of enemy types with different abilities or whom are more deadly. Usually these enemies would talk to you and be mission related. Sergeant Klein, for example, was a human in a mech suit, but was a lot tougher. You could deal significant damage to him by blowing up his missile launcher, which also removed his ability to use it, and it would almost always one-shot you if you allowed it to hit. So another thing that helps you in combat is the 2 companions you can bring with you. They have 2 signature abilities they can fire off that either primes or detonates, similar to the systems in Anthem. So Salt's Ink Mortar can be detonated by Elise's knockdown missile for a synergy combo that does extra damage and provides extra effects. They also charge up for an ultimate attack which can be fired off and is quite flashy. Like Elise can rain down explosive hell from the sky and it does a ton of damage. The only thing I noticed was it didn't seem like they were getting attacked by enemies, but I can't be entirely sure as I can't go back and look at my footage. I do know for sure that none of them were downed, so I'm not sure if that's going to be in the full game, that they won't tank for you, but just something to keep an eye on. Also, as you use characters and interact with them, they'll get affinity progress. Each affinity milestone will grant you a point to spend in their skill trees, which upgrade their combat effectiveness. They'll also have a unique environmental ability, like Tom had a zip line that he can place at key points that was fairly stealthy, and Elise can use her mech suit to bust through walls. So yes, some characters are better suited to stealth than others. If you're a stealthy character, you might not want to bring Elise. These environmental abilities are contextual, like they'll be intentionally placed spots for each. If a character is required to come along with you to a mission, chances are there will be an opportunity to use their environmental ability. What I don't know for sure yet is if when playing missions where you can bring any companion, will there be opportunities to use their unique ability around the world? If so, that means who you bring may yield different rewards or different paths. At the very least, my suspicion is that who you bring with you matters, as there are moments on each mission that we played where everyone stops to regroup and rearm. In these moments, you can chat to your companions, giving different dialogue for who you brought with you. You're even given the opportunity to flirt at these moments, meaning that perhaps it'll be easier to romance combat companions rather than non-combat ones. So your companions have progression, your weapon has multiple forms of progression, but what about your character? Well, you have a skill tree. The devs mentioned that this is still very much a work in progress, but what we got was a fairly shallow, be it wide, skill tree that consists of many passives. This is something I did express my disappointment with, to them saying that we've already got new iterations ready, that the build we played is already being replaced, so I don't want to talk too much about progression here since my experience is outdated. Suffice to say, there seems to be a lot to offset the fact that there isn't a hard class system, which I absolutely would have preferred. There is a sort of Paragon Renegade system though, called Paladin and Immortal Alignments, and we noticed narratively it came up quite a lot.
Drop your weapons now.
These choices will shape your character and change how the world responds to you.
Listen to your friend and let this go.
Not gonna happen, you mercenary scum.
This system is hard to assess with the limited time we had, but taking a clear Paladin or Immortal option gave points. Instead of simply providing more options narratively, it impacted your progression. We got to play around with the Oath system, which involved Paladin and Immortal alignments, giving you bonuses based on your alignment choices that can even affect what gear you get to equip. Notably, even the skill tree had some systems that relied on alignment. It's nice to see that they're taking the RPG element seriously, and I hope come release, these systems are incredibly deep, offering new skills and actives really to offset the fact that there aren't any classes. They know they need to make June as customizable as possible. Now, I mentioned alignment, which does suggest there are choices at the very least in the game. The way that major choices are presented was shown in the recent trailer with these kind of animated infographics. I actually really liked the style. The results of these choices we can't comment on completely since they'll play out over a long period of time, and the ones we chose we didn't get to see the end of. I just hope that some real narrative consequences are in this game, like they've talked about in all the marketing material. We can opt to keep a companion behind, for example, which we assume would advance their age by a significant amount, since the journey was said to be over 10 years due to time dilation. This could have huge implications. Another choice we got was opting to either turn off these ancient guardians or not, whom of which are located below our human city. Now, it's not that I was disappointed in the choices in Exodus, it was that I was disappointed the devs didn't allow us to see how many of them played out. They were very careful to avoid spoilers, a little too much. I don't think it was that they didn't want us to see the things that they aren't completed. They were just very worried that we would spoil things. I appreciate it, but it also makes my job hard. If I'm spoiled, it might be for the greater good, so I can tell you how I felt about the consequences overall. What I can say though is that if their ambition is to be believed, we're in for a wild ride, guys. Now, the game is semi-open in that you can more or less choose the order of side content you take on, but the main missions are linear, similar to the structure in Mass Effect 1. Things are handcrafted, you're not getting vast open worlds to waste your time in here. This is absolutely not going to be a small game though. We spent the whole day playing and I barely scratched the surface. The devs didn't want to talk about how long the game is, but it will not be a short adventure. You're getting a lot here. If I had to carry a guess, and this is entirely speculation, I'd say that the story is about 50 hours or so and much more if you do story content, just based on the rate in which we progressed. The size is most likely why a year out from release, they're still cleaning up animations, adding voices, and fine-tuning. Which brings me to the sound. What we played was completely and utterly excellent. The voice acting was amazing. The sound design, like I said, was very well done. There were moments I thought to myself that if I was into ASMR at all, I would get a kick out of this. The soundtrack was excellent and really sold the sci-fi sense of wonder and, in combat, the sense of danger. Each area we went to had different music and sounds. For example, when we're in the vacuum of space, everything dulled and we only heard the bass of our weapons. It was incredibly immersive. The cutscenes were extremely well done and the characters seemed mocapped in these moments, expressing emotions that really sold the narrative. Like I said, it's not so much that they aren't making this game to high quality, it's that they have a lot of tasks to check off because they're making it to such a high quality. One example was that while drinking in the bar, liquid in the glasses looked ultra realistic. They swished around as the characters moved and talked. Compare that to Mass Effect where liquid was just kind of there and then it wasn't when you drank it. This bar was on Persepolis, your home city on the planet of Lydon. Here you'll return to after exodusing and after minor missions, and you'll get to see the progress of your city based on your choices. It's massive with a lot to do, like talking to NPCs, getting missions, finding secrets, shopping, talking to an awakened raven called Many Talons, which was funny and very well written, and much more that I'm not allowed to talk about. It was here that I discovered a much more advanced codex system. Remember before how I mentioned you can scan enemies? Well, you can scan things in the world too. This will give a short blurb of information about the target on your screen on the UI to help you understand what you're seeing at a top level. Some were voiced, and I'm not sure if the intention is that they all be voiced, but you can click on that blurb and get further information in the codex. It was a great system and it helps people digest those books worth of interesting lore. So this was an extremely long video, I know, and if you got to the end of this,
Never thought you pricks would make it this far. Too bad you reached the end of the road.
thank you so much for sticking around. If you want to know something specific, feel free to ask it below and I will try my best to get to it. If you're at all interested in Exodus, you'll definitely want to check to see if you're subscribed and you want to check to see if you hit that bell. because I have a lot more coming. I'd actually appreciate any love that you drop. So I'll be back very soon with an in-depth gameplay breakdown. So until then, ciao friends.